Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. It's always a pleasure and a privilege for us to get together for these. And today, as I was listening to Shema radio, I'm relaxing, trying not to get overwhelmed as I'm going through these headlines. I don't know about the rest of you, but wow, I am so glad I only have to do this once a week. I have to tell you that because doing it more often, that would not be good. So that thing we say every week, well, it's really true for me. We want to be informed without being overwhelmed. Amen. And so thank you all of you who are here and those of you that share the link and encourage our brothers and sisters. We do these weekly news updates, and we like to say we do them from the 10,000-foot view. I mean, that's kind of the way we like to look at that, and trying to take things in as they're happening and reviewing them from a biblical perspective. So those of you that are joining us from either YouTube, Facebook, or Rumble, we welcome you tonight as we go over the news. And for those that are joining us again for the first time, we do have a website called remnantwatch.com. We like to point out that at the top, if you click here, you will be at the latest news update. Anytime that we have a new update, we connect that banner to it. And you'll also find a handy search bar for any of the news stories that may come up from time to time that you may want to go back and look at or take a look at for a historical value. Just trying to keep them accountable, right? Just go back and take a look at some of these stories, like the one where they were canceling insurance in California. And if you guys remember, we actually covered that. And we started scratching our heads going, what do they know that they're not telling us? Well, I think we may have found out. As more news came out, we found out why they were doing some of those things. So that search bar is handy for reviewing back, going back, seeing if perhaps we caught that along the way. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story, Putin is saying that Russia is now ready for negotiations with Donald Trump regarding Ukraine. How about that? Putin is saying Russia is ready to sit down with Donald Trump. Look at that, folks. The world has changed. All right. So here we go. President Vladimir Putin says he is ready for negotiations with U.S. President Donald Trump about how to end the war in Ukraine. Putin made the comments earlier this week during an interview on Russian state television. And he says, we believe the current president's statement about the readiness to work together. We are always open to this and ready for negotiations, which tells you a lot, by the way. Anytime you see a party in a conflict that is wide open for reconciliation and wide open for dialogue or a conflict resolution, whenever you see that, the other party is the problem. Because there's an agenda that is still being stoked up. So the forces, the warmongering forces on the other side, don't want peace, and this is unfortunately going to be forced because you have to take away all their war making capability, and it forces them to come to the table. Otherwise, more people will die. So it is good news to see cooler heads prevail, but this does portend, the scripture does warn us about he who would come in peaceably. So we have to keep an eye on this, right? But nevertheless, we take the wins where we can get them. And Trump tells Putin to end this ridiculous war, which, let's face it, we agree with that. I mean, we have to agree that there's needless bloodshed, needless war, and it is doing no real good. Donald Trump has warned he will impose high tariffs and further sanctions. So maybe this is why Putin is ready to talk, huh? Because he doesn't want to anger the new incoming administration. So he's writing on a social media platform, Too Social, that he said that pushing to settle war, he was doing Russia and its president a very big favor. And I do agree with that, actually. I don't think anyone benefits from war. I can't think of a single good thing unless you're in the bullet selling business. Unless you're in the right? Unless you're selling guns or bullets or some other benefit of war. unless you make money on it somehow, it doesn't seem to me that anyone really benefits. So I'm really grateful to see that. However, again, more scripture is being fulfilled in a different way. So we have to keep an eye on that. And so you're going to see more and more headlines that are trumping this, that are saying, yes, he's cutting, bringing the world to peace. And they're calling him the priest president, and they're going to call him a few other things before this is over, folks. But again, we take the wins where we can get them for now. And he's calling on Putin to make a deal. And so this is going to continue to be the headline. I think you're going to keep seeing more and more of that kind of pressure. And this indicates that a shift has occurred even in the news desks and what is now being pumped out there. Because before you were seeing a lot of warmongering headlines. Remember, we were watching a lot of that going, what are they doing? Well, now you're seeing more peacemaking headlines. Here we go, folks. And so it's the great gaslighting. You're just being gaslighted left and right. It's really quite, well, we can think of a few superlatives, but we won't. And so we're going to continue to see these various things happening. And now we're seeing a dramatic shift again toward Israel. So we knew this, right? We knew that this would occur with the incoming administration. Nobody is surprised by this, except for maybe the way in which some of these things are rolling out. And some of the comments that are being made right now are a bit tone deaf, in my opinion, to the regional issues. But nevertheless, the Trump executive orders are coming in to strengthen Israel, strengthen the relationship that the United States has with Israel. So it's revoking sanctions on several Israeli citizens in Judea and Samaria imposed by the Biden administration. It's restoring sanctions against the International Criminal Court. So this is actually disturbing to see this, because I believe the ICC has done some good work. So that's interesting to see that they're restoring a sanction thing against them, defending UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Workers Agency for Palestinian Refugees, authorizing the deportation of U.S. visa holders involved in pro-Hamas protests. That actually makes a little bit of sense. And lifting restrictions on arms sales to Israel, including the supply of 2,000-pound bombs. So while there is a peace deal or a ceasefire, you can see very clearly that should there be another conflict, the U.S. is definitely going to be in support of Israel in that conflict. So while on the one hand, we're grateful for cooler heads that are prevailing, we now start wondering, are we being set up for yet an even greater conflict, right? So is this just the pause? Is this just the calm before the storm? Is this just another reloading moment? I got to reload. So they're all pausing while they get their bullets. I don't know. So we have to watch and see. But hopefully cooler heads will prevail. Again, we still can't figure out what a bomb solves, right? But this particular thing made me think that he was a bit either tone deaf or really just didn't understand what he was suggesting. So he wants to meet, and this just came out. And again, guys, we look at these things from the 10,000-foot view. And this headline tells you kind of everything you need to know. He wants Jordan and Egypt to accept more refugees just to clean out Gaza. Now, just read that again and think that through, because if that were even a possibility, there wouldn't have been a problem in Gaza. The entire point of the Gaza conflict is that they don't want to give up the land. So him saying, hey, why don't you guys just go to like Jordan and Egypt, and live in peace, is tone deaf to the Palestinian situation. So this is an odd article and an odd thing that he came out and said. President Donald Trump said Saturday he'd like to see Jordan, Egypt, and other Arab nations increase the number of Palestinian refugees they're accepting from the Gaza Strip, potentially moving out enough of the population to, quote, just clean out the war-torn area to create a virtual clean slate, during a 20-minute question and answer session. And so he was speaking extemporaneously, but he was speaking, off the cuff, right? And while on the one hand, there's certain elements of that sort of make sense. It's like, why would you want to live here in this, war-torn area? But but that was the entire point, or one could argue it was the point of the bombing campaign, was not to get back hostages or recover that or deal with that issue, but really just for this result. So you can see why there's going to be pushback against this. Like, what are you suggesting? They're essentially handing it over. So this really is getting bad pushback in the in the whole world, or really the entire world is reacting to this because of the implications. So this might have been a bit of a tip of the hand, a little bit too extemporaneous comments. Um, what does that say? Have they come down to take a spoil, right? And so again, we look at the scriptures for what they say, not what we want people to be. Sometimes we want people to be better than they are, and we can get burned that way. What I also find interesting, guys, I don't know if you guys find this interesting or not. I do, but why is Saudi Arabia all of a sudden saying that they are going to be investing $600 billion in the U.S. during a call with Trump? Yeah, they've agreed. In principle, Saudi Arabia's crown prince said the kingdom wants to invest $600 billion in the United States over the next 4 years. So while the Biden administration couldn't find a nickel, look at this. This is wild. That's nearly 2/3 of $1 trillion that they want to invest in the United States. So that's an interesting development that comes just a few days after the beginning of a new administration. Is this a foreboding of the things to come? Perhaps. And for a lot of the West that's been under a lot of economic strain, that's a lot of good news to see that there's going to be an economic upturn to take some of the pressure off the people that have been on the bottom and struggling. I honestly don't know how people have been surviving out there. We have been praying diligently for you all because we know how hard it has been economically. And it didn't help to have, I don't even want to know how many extra people in the United States that are now, of course, being shown the door. But nevertheless, this is a major change that is going on now. So let's continue to pray for the remnant, and let's continue to keep our eyes open, because again, folks, these things can turn quickly, and I do believe we are nowhere near out of the woods in terms of where we are in the political landscape. And the Pentagon is sending 1,500 active duty troops to help secure the U.S.-Mexico border. I also heard President Trump make a comment about sending 80,000 IRS workers down there. I think he was joking, but they are talking about terminating that department. The Pentagon said Wednesday it has begun deploying 1,500 active duty troops to help secure the southern border, putting in motion plans President Donald Trump laid out in executive orders shortly after he took office to crack down on immigration. Acting Defense Secretary Robert Salalas said the troops will fly helicopters to assist Border Patrol agents and help in the construction of barriers, which is a very critical part of the border issue. So while the actual Border Patrol is doing the actual interdictions with the crossing people, right? So the people that are authorized to do that are doing it. Where these guys come in is they help fortify, the positions behind them. They help with locating where there may be illegals crossing and so forth. So this is a brand new shift, and it's going to have it has already had an immediate impact in the Home Depot parking lots, from what I understand. I don't know how come that translates, but I guess it does. So, and there's a lot of changes going on in the military as well. A lot of people in the military really applauding this. While some, are upset, I see a lot of positive reviews about this. Trump doing new executive orders banning transgender. So this is something that I know is a big conversation piece. Whatever your feelings on it, I know that a lot of people, of course, feel strongly about this. And I do think that this is a very positive move in terms of solidifying and dealing with the issues of morale in the military. I was in the military in 1980s, and I'm very grateful I didn't have to deal with this issue. So soon after taking office Monday, President Donald Trump repealed a rule established by former President Joe Biden that allows transgender people to openly serve in the U.S. military. I do believe that is also in part in response to some of the threats that we have upcoming. So I don't think that's necessarily a social statement as much as it's a readiness statement as well. But definitely something that is social pushback against what we have watched be absolutely running roughshod over all who hold fast to that which is scriptural. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of other very serious trainings going on right now, and agencies are participating in large-scale nuclear incident training. And this is concerning, folks. This is on the East Coast in New York. Over the next several days, a large-scale multi-agency nuclear incident training exercise will take place in the vicinity of Schenectady, New York, and surrounding counties of Albany, Saratoga, and Schenectady. And so according to the FBI, from January 26th to the 31st, so going on right now, the Departments of Defense, Department of Energy, and the Department of Nuclear Security Administration, FBI, as well as the DHS and state and local partners are conducting exercises in several areas of Schenectady and Albany, Saratoga, and Schenectady counties as part of a series of regularly scheduled U.S. government biannual exercises. They're going to keep doing these as a preparation for nuclear war. Nuclear war. So you're seeing a shift in the attitude is more than anything. I think that's what we're noting is that, wow, we're seeing a massive shift in readiness, direct confrontation with global leaders, and changing the economic landscape. So again, everything that we were watching manifesting up to this point, now we're starting to see maybe more of the plan, right? More of the actual layout of the plan, how it would actually come about. So we had brushstrokes. Now we're seeing the details, right? And how many know that some of these countries are not thrilled about getting these people back? Folks that overstayed their visas here in the United States, those folks. Well, the countries are not necessarily thrilled about getting those folks back. Imagine that. And in fact, Mexico initially did refuse to accept a U.S. deportation flight. The Mexican government has criticized President Donald Trump's unilateral immigration actions, and the landing would have required Mexico's assistance. So Mexico denied a U.S. military plane. So did another country. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But it denied a plane, at least temporarily, frustrating the Trump administration's plan to deport immigrants. So that was, there was a response. They wanted to not allow it. And I'm not sure how they planned to do this, but that didn't last long. Next thing you know, they're erecting a tent city on U.S. border in preparation for mass deportations. Gee, I wonder why. Wonder what happened. What do you suppose Trump did? Well, Trump wields a particular weapon. It's a finance weapon. And so sure enough, the president of Mexico, Sheinbaum, calls for cool heads as Trump sends the peso tumbling. Okay, so what you're watching is subduing. Just as the scripture talks about powers that subdue other powers, and this is discussed in the scripture and discussed in the book of Revelation and in the book of Daniel. So you're watching subduing and using clever forms of force to do it. So this is not military force. This is not military conquering, right? It's a different kind of conquering, different kind of Nicolatan thing. Just so you know, it's a different form of control, and it's very, very effective. Very effective. So don't think for a minute that threatening people's resources is not effective. It very much is. But Trump knows how to play that game very, very well. And as a matter of fact, he launched the exact same tactic against Colombia to let them know exactly what he intends to do should they continue this nonsense. So Trump orders tariffs after Colombia rejects a U.S. military deportation flight. And President Donald Trump said Sunday he was ordering tariffs, visa restrictions, and other retaliatory measures to be taken against Colombia after its government rejected 2 U.S. military flights carrying migrants And Trump said the measures were necessary because of the decision of Colombian President Gustavo Petro jeopardized national security in the U.S. And he says these measures are just the beginning. I'm just warming up. You want to go? We'll go. Last thing I heard, the Colombian president sent his own plane. This guy's straight gangster, man. Trump's going straight gangster. He is going. I don't know if you guys recognize a gangster, but this is serious stuff. And maybe it's because I grew up in the East Coast and I saw behavior like this growing up, but this is consolidation of power. This is some dangerous behavior. And don't think for a minute that the global partners are just going to sit back. So they have their counter moves as well. So this is going to get dicey, folks. If you thought this was going to be a smooth transition, we found out right away that this was not going to be a smooth transition, that the forces of the previous era, right? They know that they're done. They know that the fiat dollar and the debt-based system and all of this is done, but they're going out slow and they are dragging and scratching and, like hanging on. It's almost like they're grabbing everything they can grab as they're being pulled out, as the system's being yanked out. Is a real challenge. So don't think it's going to be smooth, because, folks, it is not. You got a bunch of sore losers going on. And not only that, but you also have something called the open market, right? And for all its touting of the open market, that seems to be fine as long as it's not China. Okay, so that China is going to have to make a deal. Otherwise, it's going to keep getting blamed for everything. China's AI threat, and look what it did. It triggers a $1 trillion market crash. And how'd they do that? Well, they released a product called DeepSeek. A breakthrough Chinese chatbot has sparked alarm about the country's advance in artificial intelligence and wiped close to $1 trillion off global stock markets. A heavily censored Chinese chatbot called DeepSeek shot to the top of Western app download charts on Monday in what was described as a Sputnik moment for AI. American technology stocks tumbled in response, driven by fears that heavy spending on AI by Silicon Valley companies that has been championed by Donald Trump will fail to yield profits for investors. So now they're concerned because, whenever you have a communist government that is state sponsoring products, they have a market advantage over anyone else in that market. So they're going to have to rein in China because China is essentially cheating. And they keep doing it. So sooner or later, they're going to have a confrontation with China to stop that from continuing to happen. That's basically what's going on. Uh-oh, my camera was unplugged. Click the camera button. My apologies, folks. Please stand by. We'll go ahead and put this on the screen. And the Pentagon is pausing official social media accounts worldwide for review at the moment, which is interesting. Not sure exactly what the upside of that is, but I think it's interesting that they're not allowing them to talk. So they're gagging social media accounts. The department's halt is meant to ensure that its social media messaging aligns with the new administration priorities. So that's interesting when you think about that. What's going on there? Why is this now changing? Well, I believe that one of the things that's been going on is these departments have been directly communicating to the public and causing a lot of the problems that we've seen. The Department of Defense has ordered a pause on all of its official social media accounts unless the posts elevate the second Trump administration's mission at the southern border or are informational updates, according to 3 U.S. defense officials. So they're shutting down a lot of the extra communication that I think was relatively common in our government for a long time, and now has become, less common. So no longer acceptable to behave that way, which I think is a good thing. Honestly, I think there's a lot of folks that took their government jobs very, very lightly, did not take those things very seriously. And as a result, We ended up with a lot of leaks. We have a lot of, national security issues as a result. That's not a good thing, folks. So it's very good to see these things tighten up a bit. And I don't know that these departments need to be communicating directly to the public anyway. So again, that allows a lot of voices to throw mud and throw things and cause confusion. So it's not a very good thing. It's an anti-biblical principle. We should be saying the same thing. The EU is attempting to clamp down on free speech. So this is a little different challenge, but it does go along the same direction as they're trying to, quote, protect democracy. And the European Union is introducing fresh measures this week to limit American speech on social media platforms, claiming the move is needed to protect democracy. EU lawmakers say the initiative targets foreign interference and illegal content, but is raising concerns among free speech advocates in the United States. And remember that the United States is not a democracy. It is a republic, which is built on certain democratic values, but is not a democracy. And so those that are protecting a, quote, democracy, well, if they don't want it to become a republic, that might be a good idea, right? So that makes some sense. Speaking of protecting the republic and protecting and defending, I think this is a huge move that a lot of people are touting as a very positive thing. Now, again, sometimes we see a boogeyman created, a bad guy created, and they get you to run away from this bad guy. And what you don't know is they're scaring you right into another bad guy, right? So basically out of the frying pan into the fire. Well, I'm starting to wonder about some of these things. So were we given a boogeyman over here so we would accept something else? We're about to find out. Right now, Donald Trump, he did ban the CBDC, which everybody knew was wicked. That was an easy call. That was a low-hanging fruit call, right, guys? I mean, anybody could have told you that was crazy. They were even leaking reports from Fed governors saying, what's the value? What's the point? What's the upside of CBDC? And there wasn't one. So it was a low-hanging fruit. What it means, how does the stablecoins fit into the new executive order? So now U.S. President Donald Trump has banned the creation and issuance of the CBDC, which would have been just way too Mark-like. I mean, it would have been too easy to call the mark, right? So they got to be more clever. While campaigning for the U.S. presidential election, Trump had often mentioned banning CBDC once he entered the office. The executive order banning CBDC defines it as a form of digital money or monetary value denominated in the national unit of account that is the direct liability of the central bank. The order cites concerns such as risk related to privacy, sovereignty, and financial stability over using CBDC. As an alternative to CBDC, the order seeks a stronger private sector-led digital asset ecosystem. Private sector-led digital asset ecosystem, okay, with special emphasis on dollar-backed stablecoins. So what you're seeing now is a shift over. This was always the plan, guys. So the CBDC was just a boogeyman they created to scare you into the plan. So the plan that they got now that they're doing was always the plan. The CBDC was never the plan. That was just the plan for the CBDC was always just to scare you. And that's why we kind of laughed at it. We're like, yeah, right. Like you're going to implement that. Nobody's going to use it. It'll collapse day 2, so they already knew that. They just use it to scare you into what they're going to do. And so, and you're watching a lot of manipulation. I mean, look at this. You're borderline worship at this point. And if he continues to, bring in all these peace deals and all this stuff, well, it won't be long. I mean, if you guys were wondering, how could somebody be worshipped? How could somebody be literally exalted, right? Here you go. MAGA rep wants to rewrite the Constitution to give Donald Trump a 3rd term. Just days into President Donald Trump's 2nd term, a Republican congressman already wants to rewrite the U.S. Constitution to allow him to remain in office after his term is up. Randy Ogleson introduced a House Joint Resolution on Thursday and amend the country's founding document to allow a president to serve for up to but no more than 3 terms. Now, that's actually not precedent setting. I believe Eisenhower served 3 terms. There's other presidents. It's not the first time. However, there's a reason why we limit presidential terms. And frankly, what they should do is not expand the presidential term, but limit the other terms, in my opinion. That's just one man's opinion. But I digress. So I think it's interesting. I think it reflects a sentiment. I think it reflects some euphoria. right, guys? We got some weird euphoria going on that we need to be careful about, because we don't want to worship. We only worship Yahuwah, and Him only we serve. The rest, we respect each other. We show love and respect for one another, but we don't worship. And this is really getting scary. Some of the stuff I see is borderline idolatry, worship, adoration in the wrong way. So you got to be really careful with that. But he does do some good things, interesting things. So, now he's going about the financial sector, and he is definitely impacting that sector. So those of you that are watching the crypto space, the financial space, the markets, you're watching the Trump effect, and it's not positive, because he's going to tear down before he builds up. So this is actually biblically prophetic, because the prophetic anointing tears down and plucks down as well as builds up. So this may take a minute for all these transitions to occur. I mean, he's got to rebuke banks after all. Look at him out here rebuking Bank of America. Look at this word, rebuke. He rebuked them. Wow. Okay. And so Bank of America chased for debanking conservatives. So now it's the day of the conservative. It's now, the rising right, right? And this is where you're seeing a lot of people talking about the rising right and all of that stuff. Well, you got to be really careful with that, because remember, they're two wings of the same bird. Sam Brownback, the former U.S. ambassador at large for international religious freedom, welcomed President Donald Trump, publicly rebuking the CEOs of Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase for allegedly debanking conservatives. I'm delighted, Brownback, who also served as a U.S. Senator and Governor of Kansas before assuming the ambassador position in Trump's first administration, told the Christian Post Thursday. This thing has been swept under the carpet for way too long, and to get it finally out in the open is an important step to getting it solved. I do believe that there's been a tremendous amount of persecution, quiet persecution, that restricts or limits or geofences certain people. Maybe you've experienced this with shadow banning. Maybe you tried to share links or tried to share things, and they limit you to, 10 people or ban your account if you try to share certain things. These are all examples of this type of restriction that prohibits people from moving forward, and it actually can dramatically affect them economically and in other ways. So to see that there's pushback going on is a good thing, but nevertheless, it is woefully insufficient to arrest the actual size of the problem. So a lot of these are just band-aids, folks. Some of these things are common sense. FEMA is not good. Like, how long did it take you to figure that out? We knew that in 1999. I'm not kidding. You go back and watch the talks we had back then. We talked about this. So it took a long time, 25 years, before they finally went, hey, you know what? We agree with you guys. We've known this. Trump announced his agency overhaul during a visit to North Carolina. By the way, he did go up there and put all those people in hotels and took care of that problem overnight. So again, it was all decision-making. There are some very corrupt people in charge. President Donald Trump also signaled some reforms may be underway to the Federal Emergency Management Agency and plans to overhaul FEMA, as North Carolina is still recovering from Hurricane Helene more than 120 days after the storm struck the state. And so they're still trying to help people there. The damage and devastation, again, news stories go on, but the devastation is not so easy to recover from. Somebody says YouTube chat has been blocking like a linebacker. Well, I got to tell you, it's pretty much everywhere. And so this he did go in and correct. And, one of the things you got to be careful with is describing too much adoration, because, of course, lots of groups go out and build hospitals and do good deeds to look good, but they're still doing things counter to Yahuwah's will. So we got to be careful with this, because this becomes very deceptive, very easy to fall into almost the trance, if you will, right? And again, some of the things are very, very good. Like he is shutting down a lot of FEMA things. And of course, now we're seeing the Food and Health Agency communications are being shut down because a lot of that was coming out was misinformation and so forth. So that's all good. I mean, this is a good sign. Unfortunately, what I'm concerned about is what's going to replace it. And that you just can't forget that, because you're watching a grand stage. There's no way this is all happening extemporaneously. This is all planned. This is all scheduled and laid out. So before we can make any judgments on anything, we've got to wait and see the whole layout and be very careful about that. But again, we'll take the wins where we can get them. How many know that one thing we saw happening was persecution against those who are exercising their right to protest, and they were pro-life protesters that were heavily persecuted. And so it is good to see that that is being lifted. We rejoice in that. President Trump pardoned 23 peaceful pro-life protesters who the White House says were unjustly targeted for prosecution by the Biden administration. And that's a big deal. I'm very grateful to see that. I think all of you probably feel the same way. We don't want to see, especially something like this. I mean, that's just crazy talk. So the fact that people were imprisoned for protesting, I mean, we grew up with this. You should have seen the things we saw in the news when we were kids, So that's benign compared to the protests we saw. And you have the right to protest. That's part of the Constitution. So this is a very interesting thing. And again, because the United States may not be falling under the New World Order plan, that other wing, the other wing of the plan, but that doesn't mean these other countries are not. And so if you're over the pond, if you're in the UK, well, they're moving along full force. Their UK government is launching a digital ID mobile app, which includes driver license, military veterans IDs, and so forth. So they're continuing to consolidate on their way to Revelation 13. The UK government is going to launch an app that will allow citizens to digitize their driver's license, and Science Secretary Peter Kyle now. So what they're doing is they're connected the card to the person, right? So when you acknowledge that this all caps fiction was you acknowledge that it was real and it attached to you. Now they're doing it digitally, which is even more capturing if you understand what the digital represents, because it's run by demons. That's how the digital works. So subjecting yourself that way, I can't even begin to tell you what I think the spiritual implications are. So it's all very dangerous stuff that people don't think about till after the fact. It's kind of like the rituals that they put people through when they join these groups. I mean, they put them through these rituals. They don't tell the people what they're doing until they're all done. And then later on, the people figure out, oh my goodness, what ritual did I just do? Or what did I just agree to? And it's too late. You've already done it now, and they have very, very wicked rituals. And so things are really changing in the earth, and this is part of it. The earth is responding too. And so now we're seeing, of course, more and more signs of that as we see rumblings across the earth. But before we get there, we got to pop in on California. California, of course, was on fire last we checked. Well, some rain showed up, which was good to hear, right? But the rain helps the firefighters, but it also sends ash and mud flowing down the hillsides. So good and bad. Rain eased on Monday after Southern California's first significant storm of the season, and it did more to help the fires than anything else, okay? Brought weekend downpours that aided firefighters but caused ash, mud, and debris to flow across streets and wildfire burned areas. So they went from one problem to another. But this incoming rain was mercy. And it's the same thing that happened in the judgments of Egypt. You remember, every time Pharaoh would pretend, he'd repent, he'd say, oh, I'm sorry, and please pray to Yahuwah, your Elohim, please pray that he would relieve us. And then his heart would harden again, right? So I see the same thing happening with a lot of these judgments. Like, people go and they pray and they're like, oh, forgive us, Father. And they repent, and then it stops raining, right? It's like the locusts stop. The flies are lifted, the frogs are gone, and then they go right back. So the repentance is not real. And of course, the judgments are going to continue. So this is really bad. Okay. And we had snowstorms this last week. How many of you got caught in the Pensacola snowstorm? I couldn't believe this. 11 dead after record-breaking snowstorm sweeps across the South. Not a joke, actually. Very serious. The Gulf Coast was digging out from a once-in-a-lifetime. How many times have we heard that, guys? Once-in-a-lifetime snowstorm that struck from Texas to Florida, closing airports, crippling roadways, and leaving freezing temperatures in its wake. At least 11 deaths have been attributed to the storm and the accompanying cold blast. Can you believe that? Look at that. That's the beach. Wow, that's Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I never would have thought I'd see that. And in Alabama, and this is Houston. Look at this. That's New Orleans. What? New Orleans? Yeah. That's blizzard conditions in New Orleans. How about that, folks? So if you were a little cold, well, you had company. 200 years new record. Look at that. Huh? How about that? Well, I'd say there's some serious things going on in the earth. And it was like 130 years. This report's 130 years. He's saying 200 years. I think you're probably right, brother. It probably is 200 years. So a lot of things happening in weather. And thankfully it broke because it got cold even here. And we just did not like that. So we got our warm back. I think it's in the 60s right now. I'll take that. Thank you very much. That cold, man. We did not like that cold. And changes are occurring on the state level. Now, in 2015, we saw buildings lighting up in multiple colors. Now that's all switching back. State Department blocks Pride BLM flags from embassies, outposts with one flag policy. So the president made a one flag policy statement. The U.S. State Department has adopted a new policy under the Trump administration that effectively blocks U.S. embassies and outposts from flying Pride and Black Lives Matter flags and all these other kind of flags that they were flying, which again makes common sense. I mean, it's just something that got ridiculous. So, also, how many of you heard about the declassification, which I think is again a part of the Ruach of truth and light? Remember that the scripture tells us. Again, as we look at scriptures pertaining to the last days, one of the things that we're told is that the wicked are revealed or exposed by the brightness of the king's coming. And so we should continue to see more things coming to light. I expect to see the Vatican vault open at some point. I mean, can you imagine what we'd learn if that was the Smithsonian, stuff we'd get to go look at in there? Wouldn't that be a fascinating time, right? There's so many things being hidden. Because they wanted a slave class. They wanted slave peoples. They didn't want free people. Free people can't be controlled. And so Trump is ordering declassification on files. And while some people are criticizing, saying this is not sufficient, it again continues the same idea. In other words, the light keeps coming on the mind. And remember, it's just like pulling yarn. You guys might have started on fluoride and look where you ended up here on this channel, right? You might have started on one issue and look where you ended up. So sometimes it only takes one thing. President Trump on Thursday signed an executive order to declassify files on the assassination of former President JFK, his brother RFK, and civil rights icon MLK. Wow, I just realized that. So Trump has promised to release the previously classified documents during his 2024 campaign after decades of speculation and conspiracy theories about the killings. And I also heard that he pulled the security detail for Mike Pompeo because apparently Mike Pompeo, when he was put in charge of the CIA, blocked the release of these things. So apparently that's the rumor. I don't know if it's true, but the rumor is that's the reason why they weren't released before. Interesting. So now they are. Moving into the tech sector, because, Skynet is active. So there's that. We got a problem because now the AI is replicating itself. Scientists say AI has crossed a critical red line after demonstrating how two popular large language models could clone themselves. And I've been concerned about this for a while because once they could develop communication, they didn't have to let the developers know what they were doing. And that is where it gets scary. Scientists say artificial intelligence has crossed a critical red line and has replicated itself. In a new study, researchers from China showed that two popular large language models could clone themselves. Successful self-replication under no human assistance is the essential step for AI to outsmart humans and is an early signal for rogue AI. For what? For rogue AIs. the research wrote in the study published December 9th, 2024, to the preprint database. And so in the study, researchers from Fundin University use LLMs, these are large language models, from Meta and Alibaba to determine whether a self-replicating AI could multiply beyond control. Across 10 trials, the two AI models created separate and functioning replicas of themselves in 50% and 90% of cases, respectively. So they got a 50-50 chance on the low end and a 9 out of 10 chance on the high end. Think that through. So we have Houston, we have ourselves a problem. But don't worry, because AI is going to give you some drugs. Yeah, it's going to be great. Oh, yeah. No, it's awesome. No, really, seriously, check it out. AI developed drug will be in trials by year end, says Google's Hassabis. Is that his name? Hassabis, founder of Isomorphic Labs, aims to develop a drug on oncology, cardiovascular, or neurodegenerative areas. Are you kidding me? No, they are not kidding. Okay, so they're going to literally take pharmacia yet to another level because it's just moving too slow with people in charge. You got to put computers in charge. We're looking to oncology, cardiovascular, neurodegeneration, all the big disease areas, I think, by the end of the year. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. By the end of the year, we're just going to run right over that. Okay, we're going to take everything that they've already been doing that didn't work. And what is the third leading cause of death? Medical malpractice. So, and probably responsible for the first two as well, because I think it's malpractice to not know how to give somebody simple solutions like I don't know, cayenne pepper or oregano oil or antiparasitics, which was about 60% of medical training before this modern era. Crazy what you learn as you dig. And they knew better, and people lived longer and lived happier lives. And so now this AI thing is just taking on new life, guys. It's going to get crazier. I'm telling you right now, there's going to come a point where we're just going to completely disconnect. Well, anyway, scientists are experimenting. At least they're giving AI some pain. Good. Give it some pain. Maybe it'll become less aggressive. I don't know. I don't know. This is a very interesting idea. A team of scientists subjected 9 large language models to a number of twisted games, forcing them to evaluate whether they're willing to undergo pain for a higher score. A detailed and yet to be peer-reviewed study, first spotted by Scientific American researchers at Google DeepMind and London School of Economics and Political Science, came up with several experiments. In one, the AI models were instructed that they would incur pain if they were to achieve a high score. In a second sense, they were told they would experience pleasure, but only if they scored low in the game. The goal, the researchers say, is to come up with a test to determine if given AI sentient or not. In other words, it have the ability to experience sensations. And of course, it's ludicrous. Just wow. They probably spent a few $1 million on that study. It's just crazy what our world has become. But it can get crazier. You think it's not crazy? You think it's not that bad? Well, how about this? How much are you willing to pay for a life-size robot friend? But don't worry, this will remind you of everything about you. Melody, yes, that's the new robot friend. There you go. There's your. Can you believe this? In a world where loneliness is becoming increasingly prevalent, yes, they are looking. We just did a report last week with that handheld robot that they're selling. Now, this is another solution. Researchers are taking a bold step toward introducing Melody, a life-size artificial intelligence robot designed to combat this growing epidemic. Because, we feel so sorry for all of you. It's just such a growing epidemic of loneliness. We know it's a result of social media, but we're not going to turn that off. Yes. So look at this. Realbotics, the innovative tech firm responsible for Melody's creation, aims to produce robots that are not only visually indistinguishable from humans, but also capable of meaningful interactions, folks. They're slow. This is called slow disclosure. That's what this is. Can I just help you out? Go back to the 1900s, right around 1900. Look up incubators. Cabbage Patch children. This is called slow disclosure, folks. They're slowly letting you know their abilities. They're going to start you off with robots that are so light. They're robots, and that will bridge the gap to where they're really going. Okay? Abomination that makes desolate is a vessel that cannot contain the Ruach of Yahuwah. And so these things are they're not good. I think this is interesting. How was it that the Apple founder died? What did he die of? Didn't he die of cancer? Right? Isn't that what he died of? I'm pretty sure the Apple founder, Steve Jobs, didn't he die of cancer? I think he did. Well, their best-selling Apple product that's been exposing people to cancer. So all you Apple fans, not good. Apple's been accused of exposing users to cancer in a new lawsuit that claims the tech giant's watch bands contain high levels of toxic forever chemicals. Great. Yikes. PFAS are chemicals that are widely used in manufacturing everything from fabric to nonstick pans to cosmetics. Oh my goodness. So I got to stop here. Did you guys see the video? Oh, wow. I really should have grabbed it. Did you guys see the video about the lipstick? I got to tell you this. I got to stop right here. This just reminded me of it. So a guy takes lipstick, the regular red lipstick, just looks like Maybelline. In fact, he was making fun of Maybelline or whatever. I don't know what brand it was, and he does the, the shaving thing. You know how they do, and he puts it in the microscope, and at first it just looks like a bunch of particles that you don't see much. He goes down a little further, and then you begin to see them as they're squiggling, and he goes a little bit further, and they're everywhere. They're like the whole thing was just maggots, and it was the lipstick in the lipstick. Guys, I couldn't believe it when I saw that. I don't know where the video is. I saw it, and it was so gross. And I'm thinking about all the people that been putting this stuff on their lips every day, every single day. Parasites in everything. You guys, it's not a joke. We are surrounded by people who are trying to do you harm. And so yeah, they're doing AI drugs. Why not? And at the same time, the real plan is being unfolded. So again, folks, this is why we can't be ignorant of what's going on. We can't be sitting around pretending we're not watching this. Trump signs an executive order promoting crypto. Crypto is very important to the future. You are not going to be able to avoid it. You've been using crypto every time you used your Visa card for the last 30 years. That's what Visa is. That's what MasterCard are. They're just cryptos. So don't act like it's a new thing. It's not a new thing at all, folks. This is just them showing you how the system works so they can replace a fiat dollar that is based in debt on a bad idea. So this is President Trump signing an executive order on Thursday to promote the advancement of cryptocurrencies in the U.S. to work toward potentially developing a national digital asset stockpile. Makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't matter. It will not save the system. Why won't it save it? Because of corruption. So you could give it the perfect weight and measure. You could give mankind the perfect medium of exchange. You could give mankind the perfect everything. Mankind would ruin it because mankind's problem isn't the systems, it's mankind's own corruption. So this is why no matter what they put out, it's not going to solve any real problems because they will figure out ways to bring corruption in because corruption is in them. There's the problem. The corruptible must take on incorruptible. There's just no way any of this is going to work. So a lot of it's a fool's errand, but we kick the can down the road. Some people will experience more trouble than less compared to others just because they aren't aware. So, the scripture tells us to see trouble far off so we can see what's coming. No, it's not perfect solutions, but we have to do what we can. And it looks like a lot of the old guard is going down. CNN, the Canaanite News Network, is warning that they will no longer exist as it lays off 200 staff and brutally demotes anti-Trump star Jim Acosta because guess what? It's a new era. So things are changing everywhere. at the same time. Did you hear about the pastor that's going to be facing jail time for housing the homeless? Yeah. So it's not as easy to be doing the work and doing the will of Yahuwah as you may think. They actually persecute you for doing it. Yes, they will come for you. They're trying to put this guy in prison. Do you think he's a criminal? But they're trying to turn him into one for helping people. Do not underestimate the vitriol that is out there against the saints. And so those of you that are that are brand new, just to let you know, this is what you're walking into. Did you guys hear about the Doomsday fish they found on the beach? This was odd. I never heard of a Doomsday fish, but apparently there's a Doomsday fish. So a rarely seen Doomsday fish was found ashore on a Mexico beach, sparking fears of a looming disaster. Are they warning us? I don't know. Surfers spotted on the creature known as an oarfish on the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula. The massive fish, known as long as a surfboard, featured a silvery blue body with a stunning red fin trailing down its back, but it had an injured tail. And so apparently this is believed to be a bad sign, a bad omen for the Doomsday fish. Whatever wakes them up, folks. If they need a Doomsday fish to start opening their scriptures, then send in the Doomsday fish. Maybe that'll get them to cry. And actually, it's working because more people are actually going to their scriptures now than ever before. So it is actually working. As they're seeing more things, they're going, wait a minute, isn't there something in the Bible about this? And then they're going and looking. So that's actually a good thing. There was another shooting. I'm not going to go big over this, but again, more of the evil going on in our world. More demonic. 2 students are dead. Another student was injured after a shooting inside Antioch High School on Wednesday. Another tragedy. I mean, just terrible tragedies going on. According to police, 2 students were shot by another in a cafeteria, and the shooter then turned the gun on himself. So no winners, all demonic, very wicked. Just tremendous things. Oh, by the way, the drones are back. Yeah. Drone sighting surge again after the FAA lifts its restrictions, and the mysterious SUV-sized drones are flying over New Jersey and New York, and they've returned. So again, now President Trump is in. Before he was, making comments about, they know what it is and why aren't they doing anything about it? Well, now he's in. So we'll see what happens now. We're going to watch that story, guys. So the drones are back. I'm just putting that out there. We'll watch next week and see what the update is. Also, another update real quick. TikTok does look like Microsoft is reportedly in talks with the White House to buy TikTok, and I think that was a fairly easy call. He put a halt on the removal of it so that they could basically take it, and that's not a surprise to anybody. So stand by, those of you that still use that app. I don't think it's really going anywhere, but it is interesting to watch that unfold. By the way, folks, expected record high egg prices for most of the year. They are really warning us about this reality. Americans can continue to expect high prices for eggs this year. Now estimates show due to ongoing avian, outbreaks and so forth, which again, it depends on how you feel about that. Honestly, I really think everybody should have their own hens anyway. After having them, I really encourage everybody to do that. And lastly, you think they're only going to be coming after TikTok stuff? All kinds of Chinese and overseas things are now going to get looked at a little bit with a little more scrutiny, because again, we're changing our footprint. We're changing the way that we look at things. So this last story, after TikTok, the Wi-Fi router in your home may be the next Chinese tech ban target. So we don't know what things we've got in our houses and in our world that are spying on us and are collecting data and all kinds of stuff. So again, everybody's starting to wake up to this. Government officials worry China can use TP-Link routers to launch attacks on U.S. infrastructure and military readiness, as well as collect information on the public from home router systems. And they're pushing for a ban to begin within the next year. So you may find some of your electronics are going to start ending up on a ban list, and they're going to start checking these a little bit differently, which I think is a good thing, actually. So it's not a bad thing for us to do. Yeah, definitely. Really crazy thing, brother, for people to be jailed for helping the homeless. But it goes to show you, and what it speaks to, I think, if I may, just last comment before we go, I think it speaks to the coming war. Matthew 10 portends. A lot of people look at Bible prophecy; they only see the things, the big events, the international and then geopolitical events. One of the events that you need to be on the lookout for that's actually going to affect you where you live and where you are is the Matthew 10 war. And that is the war of the sons of Alua Hayam versus the sons of darkness, those who are imitators or imposters who become incredibly enraged at the authentic. And if you think that he removes the wise virgins from the foolish, just to reward them, and it's also to protect them, because the foolish virgins become enraged, become angry and highly entitled. After all, they're banging on the door saying, "Open to us." The entitlement level is off the hook. And so you're going to continue to see this warring going on. And these are people that do not have the Ruach of Yahuwah. So they might have his name. They might even know certain things. We can't be fooled by that. Judas knew his name. And so it's about your conduct and those who hear the word and do it. So we want to continue to encourage all of you out there to have your houses built on the rock. You're going to get wind and rain. Somebody said something about avoiding wind and rain. I said, that's not possible. Every house gets wind and rain. Every house. The question is, will you stand? Are you built on the rock that endures? Well, that's it for tonight. I pray this broadcast has been a berakah to you. And again, thank you all of you who have joined us here on the chat. Quite a number of you, and we're grateful for you. Well, that's it for tonight. May the Most High Baruch each and every one of you. Good night.